Crisis of faith. The Catholic Church in America has been in crisis for decades. This is an uncomfortable truth, but one that will not change unless we face it. Modern Catholics are experiencing a crisis of faith. Materialism and secularism have been eroding the faith of Catholics for decades. The result is most starkly recognized in the research that shows only 31% of Catholics in the United States believe Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. Here are a few more statistics that reveal the depth and breadth of this crisis. More than 50 million Catholics in the United States have stopped practicing their faith over the past 30 years. More than half of all American adults raised Catholic, 52%, have now left the Church. Only 8% say returning to the Catholic Church is something they could imagine doing. We have closed a Catholic parish in the United States every 3 days for the past 35 years. We have closed a Catholic school in the United States every 4 days for the past 25 years. Over the past 50 years, we have lost a Catholic priest from active service every day in the United States due to retirement, death, men who have left the priesthood voluntarily, or those who have been removed. In 1973, there were 58,000 priests in the United States. The average age was 35, and only 10% were over the age of 65. Today, there are 37,000 priests in the United States. The average age is 64, and 40% are over the age of 65. 3,500 parishes in the United States are now without a resident priest. These numbers are real, but statistics are cold. Behind each of these vast numbers is a human being, and a soul, and a family, often a marriage, and more often than that, parents who suffer wondering why their child no longer goes to Mass and what went wrong along the way. We have all been impacted personally by these statistics, but there is another aspect for us to keep in mind as we chart a path forward. I tried to capture it more than 20 years ago in the opening line of the first edition of Rediscover Catholicism. The Church, like so many other things in life, is not so much something we inherit from generations past or take over from our predecessors, as it is something on loan to us from future generations. The Catholic Church is on loan to us from future generations. The negative trends above are only part of the picture. Wherever the Catholic faith is authentically lived out, the genius of Catholicism still has the power to attract people of all ages and help them make sense of life. In 2014, in the United States, there were 708,979 infant baptisms, 44,544 adult baptisms, and 70,117 adults received into full communion. Even more encouraging is the data which shows that 43% of people who consider themselves cultural Catholics, Catholic but not practicing, say they can imagine returning to the Catholic Church in the future. We need to forge the kind of future that will bring them back. It is easy to be critical, and it is even easier to become overwhelmed by the challenges we face. But we all have some responsibility here, and we all have a role to play in renewing the Church in our place and time. In order to reflect upon our role and responsibility, I invite you to reflect upon this question. There are 1.2 billion Catholics on the planet. What would the Catholic Church be like if we multiplied your life by 1.2 billion? Catholicism has not lost its power to transform lives, yet people are abandoning Catholicism at an alarming rate in Europe and the United States. And this is not a new trend. And so I raise the question, what are we going to do about it? The key to answering that question is one piece of data that is more significant than all the data we have reflected upon collectively so far. Note: sources: Pew Research Center, USCCB, CARA, the Dynamic Catholic Institute, and U.S. Census Bureau. Where data is not current year, the year shown is the latest data available. Those who believe don't leave. What is the difference between the people who have left the Catholic Church over the past 30 years and those who have stayed? I believe the answer to this question holds the key to re-energizing the Catholic Church. It would be easy to escape into the complexity of this issue and say there are many differences. We have spent the last 30 years lost down that rabbit hole. It is true. There are many differences between these two groups, but it is equally true, more so in fact, that one difference marks the essential difference between the 50 million people who have left the Catholic Church over the past 30 years and those who have stayed. What is the one thing? What is this essential difference? Those who believe don't leave. Believe what? Believe that Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. Those who believe this single truth may feel like they are not being fed. They may disagree with the way their priest is doing things. They may not like the direction the music is moving in. They may have different liturgical preferences. They may get divorced, and they may feel unseen and unwelcome in their parish community. And yet, despite all these things that have led millions of other people to leave, they stay. Why? They believe Jesus Christ is truly present in the Eucharist, and they know that only the Catholic Church can offer this gift to them. They might be able to go down the road and experience better preaching and more dynamic music, but they are simply not willing to give up the Eucharist in exchange for that. Why? Because it's a bad deal. But you have to know and believe that Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist to understand how bad a deal it is to give that up for what is trivial by comparison. Those who believe don't leave. This one piece of data is more significant than all the other data combined. Those who believe don't leave. This single truth holds the power to change everything. The most effective way to slow and halt the exodus the Catholic Church is experiencing in the United States is to lead people to believe in the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And the most effective way to bring people back to the Catholic Church will be by leading them to believe that Jesus is present in the Eucharist. And the most effective way to attract people to Catholicism who have never even considered becoming Catholic is by facilitating for them powerful encounters with Jesus Christ, who lives among us today in the Eucharist. We all know plenty of people who have left the Church, and even more who have simply stopped practicing their faith. But how many people do you know who have left the Catholic Church who believe in the true presence? None, I suspect. I don't know any, and herein lies the answer. If we yearn to re-energize the Catholic Church in America, if we want to bring our friends and family home, if we want to spare future generations the pain and confusion that comes from leaving the Church, the Eucharist is the answer. Specifically, powerful encounters that inspire belief in the true presence of Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. This is the one thing, the Eucharist. Jesus present in our tabernacles and monstrances, Jesus waiting to give himself to us in communion during the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Those who believe don't leave. It's the one simple, beautiful truth that will change everything.